This is Under Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with a sprinkling of national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. The Pro Football Hall of Fame listed 54 seniors, coaches, and contributors as semifinalists for the class of 2023. The names include two former Denver Broncos coaches, Mike Shanahan and Dan Reeves, and one player that played for the Denver Broncos, Randy Gradishar. All those names that I just listed are deserving. Now, for me, Mike Shanahan should be a no-brainer. Shanahan meant a lot for the Broncos franchise. He was the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos from 1985 to 1987. With Shanahan as offensive coordinator, under Dan Reeves, who was the head coach, the Broncos went to two Super Bowls, Super Bowl 21 and Super Bowl 22. The Broncos lost both of them. Super Bowl 21, 39-20 loss to the New York Giants. Now, Super Bowl 22, it was a different story in the first quarter. The Broncos were ahead 10-0. Hey, it looked like they were going to win, except for there were three more quarters, and the Broncos kind of forgot about that as they lost 42-10 to the Washington Redskins, who were at the time the Washington Redskins. The Redskins scored 42 unanswered to win that game 42-10. Now, Shanahan finally got his first big gig as head coach in 1988 for, at the time, the Los Angeles Raiders. I know the Raiders have, changed where they have played, but if you look at it, remember the Raiders were located in Oakland from 1960 to 1981. They moved to LA and spent 1982 to 1994 there. That is why Mike Shanahan was the head coach of the Los Angeles Raiders. Now, they came back to Oakland from 1995 to 2019. Of course, we know since 2020, they are the Las Vegas Raiders. Anyway, Shanahan was the head coach of the Los Angeles Raiders, and it didn't last long, from 1988 to 4 games in 1989. There was a lot of stuff happening with the franchise, and if you want to find out what that was, Google Mike Shanahan and beef, or just Google Mike Shanahan's time with the Los Angeles Raiders. You will get your answer. Anyway, at the time of his firing, the Raiders were 1-3. They finished the year at 8-8. His overall record with the Raiders was 8-12, so not very good. He returned to the Mile High City for the 1991 season as the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. In 1992, Shanahan joined George Seifert's staff, and he was the offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers as George Seifert was the head coach. He was there until 1995. Shanahan helped the 49ers win Super Bowl 29, beating the San Diego Chargers, who are now the Los Angeles Chargers, 49-26. Shanahan ended up as the Broncos head coach from 1995 to 2008. The thing was, he was the best coach in Broncos history, and we will get to that here in a moment. Anyway, with the Broncos, Shanahan went to the playoffs 7 times and 2 Super Bowl victories. That right there should tell you he's a Hall of Fame coach. In 2018, or should I say 2008, it was rather disappointing. 2008, the Broncos led the AFC West by 3 games. All they had to do in the final 3 games was to figure out how to win one of those games. It came down to the last week of the season, and the Broncos lost 52-21, and Denver let him go after that embarrassing loss in 2008. Now, at the time, I was in favor of Shanahan leaving and getting fired by the Broncos. They blew a chance to make the playoffs. Of course, I kind of regretted that decision because look at the name that they hired. I really want to forget that this guy was the head coach. That was Josh McDaniels, who is now the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And maybe he has learned something from his time with the Denver Broncos. But anyway, McDaniels didn't even last 2 years with a record of 11-17 in the Mile High City. Probably the worst coach in Broncos history. Back to Shanahan. His record with the Broncos was 138 wins and 86 losses. Those 138 wins as head coach are ranked number 1 in Broncos history. So after the Broncos fired him, he went to the Washington Redskins. Yes, I know they're the Washington Commanders now, but they were the Washington Redskins. He was there for 4 years, from 2010 to 2013. His record with Washington was 24-40. Really not a great record. Looking at his overall coaching record in the NFL, and this is why he deserves to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It is 170 victories, 38 losses, and 2 Super Bowl victories, and his teams went to the playoffs 8 times. What more do you want? Another former Denver Broncos coach is also a semifinalist, Dan Reeves. Reeves spent 1981 to 1992 as the Denver Broncos head coach. The Broncos earned 6 playoff appearances and went to 3 Super Bowls with him. Of course, they were all losses. Super Bowl 21, which I talked about, 39-20 to the New York Giants, as that was a loss. Super Bowl 22, as they had a 10-0 lead and lost 42-10. And the final one was Super Bowl 24. This is the worst defeat in Super Bowl history, as they lost to Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers 55-10. Anyway, Reeves stayed with the Broncos until 1992 with an 8-8 finish. Denver actually let him go after that. If you look at his record in Denver, it was 110 wins, 73 losses, and 1 tie. The 110 victories is number 2 behind Mike Shanahan as head coach in Broncos history. From 1993 to 1996, he was the New York Giants head coach. It didn't go so well. The Giants went 31-33 under him, and he made the playoffs only once in 1994. His last head coach, basically his last stop as head coach, was in Atlanta from 1997 to 13 games into 2003. Atlanta fired him in 2003 when they were 3-10. Now he had 49 wins and 59 losses with 1 tie as head coach with Atlanta, and they earned a playoff spot twice, 1998 and 2002. Well, in 1998, they went to Super Bowl 33, but the Broncos beat them 34-19. 2002, Atlanta was beaten in the divisional round by Philadelphia 20-6. Now, looking at Reeves, not many coaches are lucky enough to coach a team to 4 Super Bowls. I know it would have been great if he won 1, but 4 Super Bowl appearances as head coach put him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He earned a playoff spot 9 times. His overall record in the NFL is 190, 165, and 2 ties. So 190 victories, 165 losses, and 2 ties. So 190, 165, and 2 ties, a winning percentage of .535. One player, and I don't understand why he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is Randy Gradishar. Gradishar's career lasted, so he was part of the Denver Broncos from 1974 to 1983, all with the Broncos. He became one of the best tackling linebackers in NFL history, and according to the Gazette.com, a newspaper in Colorado Springs, Colorado, so Colorado Springs, Colorado newspaper, Gazette, basically said that his tackles at the time he retired was 2,049, the most in NFL history. Gradishar was also a part of one of the top defenses in Broncos history, the Orange Crush, in 1977. They appeared in Super Bowl 12 and lost to the Dallas Cowboys. That was the first ever appearance in the Super Bowl for the Denver Broncos. Now, without Gradishar, who knows if they make that Super Bowl? Those 3 names are part of 54 names trying to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2023. So that's Randy Gradishar, Mike Shanahan, and Dan Reeves. Now, for Gradishar, he will find out on August 16th if he's a finalist. That is when the seniors committee will meet to pick up to 3 senior finalists. Hopefully, Gradishar is one of those 3 names. For Shanahan and Dan Reeves, they have to wait until August 23rd. That is the coach/contributor committee members meet. They will pick one coach or contributor for finalists in 2023 for actually basically final consideration. For Dan Reeves and Mike Shanahan, that is on August 23rd, with the coach/contributor committee only picking one. For all these names, it is way long overdue for Dan Reeves, Mike Shanahan, and Randy Gradishar. As a Broncos fan, Gradishar should have been in years ago. Same for Shanahan and Dan Reeves. We will just have to wait and see if any of them move on to be finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2023. We're going to stay in the NFL. We had a very big trade, and we'll get to that in a minute and what it means for the Carolina Panthers. But they open up training camp on July 26th. We all know that Baker Mayfield was traded to the Carolina Panthers. Now, there was a lot of people who assumed that meant Baker Mayfield is going to be the starter. That isn't the case. I just think it's not necessarily saying that he's going to be the starter, but at least they have two veteran quarterbacks in Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. So if you look at Sam Darnold, he was a starting quarterback last year, and he was traded to Carolina on April 5th, 2021. So if you look at last year, that actually happened in last year's free agency, where Sam Darnold was traded from the New York Jets to the Carolina Panthers on April 5th, 2021. The Panthers hoped he would be an improvement for them at the quarterback position. Well, he really wasn't. Darnold went 4-7 as a starter, passing for 2,527 yards and 9 touchdowns. The problem was he couldn't stop throwing interceptions and the ball into coverage, and those were knocked away or picked off. Okay, I get that Darnold wasn't the quarterback they hoped for when they made the trade, but he went 4-7. The Panthers finished the year at 5-12. I never thought they were looking for a quarterback in free agency or to trade for one. I knew they would in the draft, and they hoped that Matt Corral was or is their future at quarterback, and he was selected in the 3rd round. The fact that you already drafted a quarterback, I didn't think you were looking for another one. I figured that was it for them at the position. Nope, they traded for Baker Mayfield. So with this trade, it means that Mayfield and Darnold and possibly Corral are going to have an open competition for the starting quarterback. I figured this was going to happen. Both of these quarterbacks have played 4 years in the NFL. That is Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Mayfield has the edge in terms of record. He is 29-30. So 29 wins and 30 losses as starting quarterback. That is better than Darnold's record of 17 wins and 32 losses. Mayfield also has more passing and touchdowns than Darnold. Mayfield has tossed 14,125 yards and 92 touchdowns. On the other hand, though, if you look at Sam Darnold, he has 10,624 passing yards and 54 touchdowns. In terms of interceptions thrown, that is the only area where Darnold actually has the edge. Darnold tossed 54 to Mayfield's 56. That is close. Looking at just these stats, it says Mayfield should probably be the starter. Not so fast. Yes, the Panthers traded for him, but that doesn't mean he's going to start in week 1. Darnold should probably have the first crack to be the starter. The reason why is he knows the Carolina Panthers system, and he has played one more year than Mayfield in the Carolina Panthers organization. They're going to have a competition, though, to prove who should start week 1. If you ask me right now, it's Sam Darnold because he has spent 1 year in the system. Practice and training camp is going to decide who should start the first preseason game. Just because, let's say Sam Darnold starts the first preseason game, that doesn't mean he will be the starter for the rest of the year. It could be Baker Mayfield's chance in week 2. Now, their first preseason game is on August 13th against the Washington Commanders. Let's just say Sam Darnold gets the start. He plays well. That just means he has another shot or another week to be the starter. Struggling in camp and preseason games for Sam Darnold gives Baker Mayfield the starting gig. We really don't know until the end of preseason for the Panthers, which is on August 26th, when they face the Bills, who will be the number one starting quarterback. Even if, say, Mayfield has the edge in week 1, that doesn't mean he will keep it. After a few bad games, and let's just say Mayfield is a turnover machine, then Darnold gets a chance. Having a competition may force both players to show they can play, and it may elevate Corral's play as well. With that, though, it will elevate their game in the best of ways. You want the best out of these players. Either way, though, at least the Panthers will have a backup quarterback if it's Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, who is a veteran and who has started NFL games. That is hard to come by, and it's key because a lot of teams don't have that. So we are going to finish up in the National Hockey League, also known as the NHL. We know free agency started on Wednesday. The Avalanche, who are Stanley Cup champions, kept some of their players. They kept Valeri Nichushkin, and I love his nickname, Choo Choo. Anyway, Valeri Nichushkin was a key forward for the Avalanche during their playoff run to the Stanley Cup. Nichushkin in the regular season scored 25 goals and he added 27 assists for a total of 52 points. He had time on the power play, scoring 5 goals and adding 4 assists on the man advantage. He was also Valeri Nichushkin was also key on the power play kill. He blocked shots so those pucks wouldn't go on his goaltender. In the regular season, he also had 2 shorthanded goals. We all know his play helped the Avalanche to 119 points, the most in the Western Conference. Of course, the regular season doesn't mean anything unless you win the whole thing. He wanted to play well in the postseason for the Avs. Head coach Jared Bednar even moved him up to the first line at times during the playoffs, and hey, it worked. He performed well at a high level, scoring 9 goals and adding 6 assists for a total of 15 points. Now, if not for the play of Cale Makar, he would have, that is, Valeri Nichushkin, would have won the Conn Smythe Trophy as MVP of the playoffs. The Avalanche knew they didn't want to lose him in free agency, and they were quick to sign him, agreeing to an 8-year, $49 million contract. So he's going to get paid $49 million throughout the contract. So that is total. Now, Valeri Nichushkin, this is a great thing for the Avalanche. He actually stays with the core of Nathan MacKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, and Mikko Rantanen. So that's Nathan MacKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, and Mikko Rantanen, and they kept Valeri Nichushkin, so that adds to the core. He was key to keep. The Avalanche also knew they weren't going to keep Darcy Kuemper. The reason why is money got in the way, and we'll get to that in a minute. Kuemper played well for the Avalanche, going 37 wins, 12 losses, and 4 overtime losses in the regular season. His goals against average was 2.54 with a save percentage of .921. Those stats say the Avs should have kept him. And if you look at his playoff numbers, they were great too. He was 10-4 with a goals against average of 2.57. So 10-4 with a goals against average of 2.54 and a save percentage of .902. The problem with Darcy Kuemper was he was going to get himself a hefty payday. The Avs really didn't want to lose him, but they couldn't pay him. And basically, he priced himself out. So what did they do? The Avalanche went out and traded for Alexander Georgiev. It is expected with this trade that he will be the backup to Pavel Francouz, but has his chance to start. But Alexander Georgiev, as of right now, will be the backup. So what are the Avalanche getting in Alexander Georgiev? He was with the Rangers this past season, and he won 15 wins, 10 losses, and 2 overtime losses with a goals against average of 2.92 and a save percentage of .898. Not great numbers, but the Avs are better defensively than the Rangers, so those numbers should improve. The postseason is what matters, and he doesn't really have postseason experience, appearing in 2 games with a record of 0-1 with a goals against average of 2.04 and a save percentage of .935. He is a goaltender with not much playoff experience, but hey, it is what it is. Looking at Alexander Georgiev, his record in the regular season is 58 wins, 48 losses, and 11 overtime losses. His goals against average is 2.94 and a save percentage of .908 in his career. Alexander Georgiev will have a chance to start if Pavel Francouz struggles. The Avalanche front office is hoping he can be the backup, and the Avs will do what they did last year, score goals and play defense in front of him. Now, the other moves the Avalanche made recently was keeping two key free agents, forward Darren Helm and defenseman Josh Manson. Darren Helm was a key veteran on the bottom two lines for the Avalanche. Last year, he didn't do much, scoring 7 goals and 8 assists for 15 points. Now, they didn't get him because of his scoring ability, but the fact that he had playoff experience. Now, and leadership. Now, going into the playoffs, the Avalanche have never been past the second round since 2002. Well, Darren Helm in this year's playoffs said, we're going to go to the second round because he scored the game-winning goal when the game was tied at 2 against the St. Louis Blues in Game 6 of the second round. Darren Helm said, no, we're not going to overtime, and actually scored with 6 seconds left. Now, a great move to keep him. Helm is a veteran, and that would be hard to find in the free agent market. Helm will be on the power play, and he will be on the power play kill, and he will block shots. A smart move for the Avalanche, agreeing to a 1-year, $1.25 million contract. Now, the Avalanche also kept defenseman Josh Manson. Now, I heard reports, and I'm not sure how true they were, he wanted to go back to the Anaheim Ducks, where he spent 2014 to 45 games into this year with the organization. These were just rumors. Josh Manson never said, hey, that's where I want to go. He definitely wanted to stay with the Avalanche, agreeing to a 4-year contract, and it's worth $8 million throughout the contract, or $18 million throughout the contract, I should say. Now, Manson was traded to the Avalanche, and this was going to make the blue line tougher. Well, it did, as he checked players off the puck. In 22 regular season games for the Avs, Manson had 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points. In the postseason, Manson also added 3 goals and 5 assists for 8 points. Looking at the moves the Avalanche made in free agency, of course, they kept Artturi Lehkonen, who scored the game-winning goal in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final, and you keep Josh Manson and Darren Helm. Great moves. The Avalanche are in great shape to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. Now, I'm not saying they will go back, but this is a team that could do something special. I do like what they've done in free agency. Of course, we have to figure out if they want to keep Nazem Kadri, because Kadri says he wants to stay with the Avalanche, but the problem with him, though, is his price tag. Right now, the Avalanche do not have any cap space to keep Nazem Kadri, but it's possible they could if they actually trade Sam Girard, a defenseman, and I'd be okay with that because their blue line is stacked. But we will have to wait and see what the Avalanche do. But so far, I have liked what they have done because it looks like they're going to try to roll it back and win the Stanley Cup again. I'm Jordan Long. This has been Under Review. Read my blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. Check out all the shows we have on the Sideline Sports Network and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of them. We have shows every single day of the week, so subscribe so you don't miss any of them. This has been a Sideline Sports production.